The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
It's a drive-through town. Stop and think about it, it'll drive you down. Don't you dare to doubt it, son, we're nowhere bound. There's no road out of the drive-through town. They built a river town on the banks of the Ohio. Rolling slow. The water's low. Wife and a baby in a house upon Union Hill. You'd work the steel till they close the mill.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 57, and our guest is Matt Woods. Matt is a singer and songwriter based in Nashville. His latest record is called Natural Disasters. It came out in 2019, and it's absolutely outstanding. This episode came about because I had the pleasure of being on a local Orlando radio station, the State of the Scene show, hosted by my friend Frankie Messina, and Matt was also on the show that day. I've been a fan of his music for a long time and briefly met him, but we never really had a chance to sit down and chat. So we agreed to talk, and the day before, I decided that it was probably time I self-quarantined due to the COVID-19 virus. Matt came over to the house over here to Marinade Studios, and we recorded over 2 hours of conversation. It was just so much fun, and we kept rolling. I'll release the other part as a Patreon exclusive episode, which I'll talk about at the end of the show during the What I'm Getting Down On segment. But this was just so much fun, and I'm so grateful for Matt's time. Matt's an easy guy to talk to, and I had such a blast talking about music, creativity, and so much more. You can find all things Matt Woods at therealmattwoods.com. Everyone, my conversation with Matt Woods.
You get high in a cinder block building out River Road. We all know where lights stay low. Walk around back into the bank and start sinking down. And quietly drown. Not being found. It's a drive-through town. Stop and think about it, it'll drive you down. Don't you dare to doubt it, son, we're nowhere bound. There's no road out of a drive-through town. It's a drive-through town. Stop and think about it, it'll drive you down. Don't you dare to doubt it, son, we're nowhere bound. There's no road out of the drive-through town. No road out of the drive-through town. No road out of the drive-through town.
That's so interesting.
So I always try to make sure that people who have been really good to me, take care of the people who've been good to me.
When you mentioned, and we talked about this the other night, so thank you so much for coming to Chris's art show, by the way.
Yeah,
that was so cool for everybody listening. Everybody knows how excited I've been about her show and like how much work she's put into it, and so it meant a lot that you stopped by, and we ended up having this wonderful conversation that I wish I would have been recording then.
And that's the way it always is,
right?
Like,
all the magic happens when the mics aren't on,
Right.
But one of the things that we talked about, and you just kind of mentioned it, was when you started out and how you were hustling, and that very early on, you made the decision, like, I'm gonna go all in on this music thing. Can you talk about that decision and like what went into that, making that decision?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time I was finishing up college or just out of college and waiting tables. So the decision wasn't too hard to make. It's like, oh, I'm gonna give up this career of waiting tables. I just
walk away from the glamour that
was Ruby Tuesday. But basically, it just it happened pretty organically. I ended up, just getting a foot in the door in the Knoxville, kind of like local Knoxville scene. And at the time, there were tons of places booking, acoustic solo guys or duos or whatever to play music for several hours a night, in the corner of the bar. There was far more of that going on in Knoxville at that time than there is these days. So as I got a foot in the door into that scene by showing up at other guys' shows, and then they'd maybe ask me to play on their set breaks, and then maybe eventually fill in a show, and I started booking my own shows. And the more work I found playing music in these bars that were booking the acoustic guys all the time, the decision kind of made itself. It's like it got to a point I was playing more nights of the week than shifts I was working waiting tables. And it's like, why am I going into wait tables on a Saturday afternoon for 3 or 4 hours when I've spent the last 2 nights out playing music?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was easy to do that.
But it was paying well enough.
Yeah, certainly.
That's great.
Yeah,
I don't think that's most people's experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would be the experience now. That's the funny thing. I had a conversation with Sean Holcomb. Sean's here in Orlando. We had a conversation about this very thing just the other night. And I don't know if it's just a matter of like time and place, but it was a good many years ago, in Knoxville. But there was this sort of like local economy market and this sort of thing where lots and lots of the bars that kind of like locally owned, sports bars or the occasional like casual dining restaurant with a patio or something like that. They were booking a lot of entertainment and paying a reasonable rate for that. Since then, I feel like some of that has gone away. In part. Uh-oh.
Hey, leave it.
No problem. Little puppy destruction going on.
Seriously. You're a little natural disaster. All right. Sorry, everybody.
No. But yeah, I don't know. I think one of the things that sort of contributed to that change is musicians, especially when they're kind of starting out, and especially in Knoxville, which is a college town,
right?
Are just eager to get out and play.
Yeah.
So I can put my finger on like a couple of acts about that time who started to sort of show up on the scene as like young guys in college with guitars and a handful of songs and some, buddies or fraternity brothers or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, we'd love to play on your Wednesday night for a bar tab or something.
Right.
And the bars are like, wait a minute, you'll play for what? And we're paying these guys a decent wage.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
that's I think that's only one element of the thing. But it changed.
Right.
And it would be harder to make a decent living doing that now.
Yeah.
Than it was 20-something years ago.
Well, it's criminal what people get paid around here. Like, I mean, I know, and a lot of these folks too. Plenty of folks who are really good songwriters who play almost every night. They've got a different gig somewhere almost every night, and like they all work full-time jobs.
Yeah, right.
You know, and it's crazy to me to think that you can just go on a Wednesday or whatever and see Jordan Foley or whoever.
Yeah.
You know, and that the bars are just, I mean, it's fucking criminal. Like, it's crazy how little, now that I've kind of gotten in it a little bit,
Right.
and started to have those conversations with people and people that book bands, and the people booking it are like, look, man, I'd love to pay more.
Yeah.
I just don't have more.
Well, that's the truth of it. I've been on both sides of it too, because I was booking a music venue in Knoxville for a while. Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, a lot of time it's just the budget isn't there
Yeah.
to spend a lot, you know, on entertainment, especially if you want to have a lot of entertainment. And you know, I think having live entertainment in a bar setting, like I saw Jordan's show at the Imperial the other night. That's a great place to hang out, and you want to have someone singing and presenting some music, you know, especially like a strong songwriter like Jordan.
Right.
But I mean, what can be expected? I think there were probably, you know, 20 or 25 of us in there, you know, and having been in the bar business too, I know what those numbers are like.
Right.
So yeah, it's a tricky thing. I eventually ended up moving away from, you know, playing several nights in my hometown, to taking the show on the road. And that's how it, you know, as what I was doing became less of a guy in the corner entertaining people for 3 to 4 hours a night, playing a lot of covers and stuff like that, and the focus turned toward my music and making records and putting bands together and then touring some with those bands and everything like that. It was the next step was logically like, you know, I have to take this show on the road and start traveling, because there's only so many nights you can present that show in one market, you know,
Right.
without burning people out.
When you're doing those early gigs and you are playing a lot of covers, are you writing your own stuff at the time?
Yeah,
A lot, or what did that look like?
I was writing well before I ever started doing that. I was writing songs, you know, the whole time from the time I was a teenager, all through my like university years and everything like that. But yeah, it was a bit disproportionate then. Like if the show was a 3-hour show, you'd get maybe 30 minutes of original music, because that's what I felt I had, you know, that was of a quality to share. You
Right.
know? And probably, to be honest, I wasn't writing as frequently. As I've gotten older, my writing has become far more frequent. I would worry, but I would get hung up, you know, as a young songwriter, I would get hung up on like, you know, is this song unique enough, or like, I don't want to, this sounds like a thing that, you know, Pearl Jam was doing, you know, and,
Right.
but once I quit overthinking every piece of every song and just let the songs start to come out on their own, they started coming far more frequently. And then you get it out there, and then you kind of like whittle it down and sand it and hone it, and, you know, try to make it the best song it'll be. And some of them still never really, make it out. Like there are always a few songs that get finished that never really come to the surface and make it into the live shows or make it into the records, and they're just demos sitting somewhere that kind of got shelved.
How do you make that decision? How do you know whether it is of the quality that you want to then present to the world?
A lot of the time for me, it just kind of happens. You know, like sometimes I think a lot of us are always super excited to get new songs, you know. And I'll get new songs, and especially in a solo acoustic songwriter setting, I'll try them out, you know. Like, I'll try them. I'll wait till just the right moment at the right show, and when I can sneak one of the new ones in and start to see how it feels live. And because I don't really know any I don't know how I feel about the songs until I start to play them live.
That's great.
So I'll sneak it in, I'll play it, and some of them just kind of like naturally fall away. You know, I'll find myself in shows and maybe think, oh, should I play this one? And just not really want to for whatever reason, or play it but feel it not quite land, you know, with people. So that's kind of how sometimes they fall away. Sometimes they just fall away because I forget. Like I'm just, you know, I don't play something for long enough, and then it's like, oh, there was this.
That's interesting.
As a matter of fact, I was with my friend Dave DeWitt, who recorded most of the albums I've released under my own name. Most of the Matt Woods records I recorded in Knoxville with Dave at his place. The last one notwithstanding, I did the last one, the Natural Disasters record, with Joey Knizer in Nashville. But I was home. I was back in East Tennessee over the holidays, and I'm hanging out with Dave, and he's moved, so there's a new studio, and we're hanging out, you know, and he's showing me his new pad and everything, and we're just listening to kind of files that were saved. He's like, and he brings up the fact that he has a bunch of my stuff just on a drive, you know. For every record, I always record more than I need or release.
Okay.
So we started listening to these tracks that he has on a drive and I had literally forgotten about, you know. It's been 2 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years in some cases. He's like, man, I think you should put this one out sometime, and he plays it, and I'm like, oh man, you know, I forgot that was a song, you
Wow.
know, because once the record came out, you know, I was on the road supporting the record, playing the songs that made the cut, and the handful that didn't make it kind of fell by the wayside. Not because I don't like them, just because it wasn't feasible to put out a 17-track record.
So
know?
do you think that one would resurface in some way? I mean, do you think
I think so. I think so at some point. But the question is how. You know, how does that resurface? Because I'm always writing new stuff, and like I said, you're always in love with the new stuff. So then you start to collect, you know, these trimmings. I hate to say it that way because it doesn't. I don't know. I feel like to call them trimmings, it makes them sound somehow like lesser than. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't feel
That's
that
not
way.
what you mean, though.
I don't feel that way about the songs. It's just, you know, for example, this, and I can't remember the name of the song. The one song in particular I'm thinking, I can't even remember the name of it. But we went into the sessions for the How to Survive record.
Uh-huh.
And that record came out October of 16. So it was, say, December of 15, January of 16, we were working on that record. We took 19 tracks into the sessions and released a 12-song record.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And of those 7 that got cut, I think 5 or 6 of them got finished, and I was pretty happy with most of the ones. Like, one of them didn't get finished because the studio, like, it just, the vibe wasn't feeling right.
Interesting.
The vibe on the song wasn't feeling right, so we abandoned it before we finished it. But the other ones, we finished completely, you know, completely tracked, completely mixed, and we were happy with. It's just when we put together the album and the way the songs would work together, keeping in mind how many minutes will fit on vinyl.
Oh, uh-huh.
We had to cut some of them.
Interesting. Has that always been a consideration, or is that a more recent thing with the sort of wave of vinyl, the resurgence of vinyl?
It's always been a consideration to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So the first like Matt Woods record that I did post like rock and roll bands was it never got released on vinyl. Vinyl, you know, while I've always collected vinyl, it hadn't really come back into popularity in the way it has in recent years. That album came out in 2011. So the consideration was at that time how to put an album together without it feeling so long that people lose interest. But in the compact disc format or whatever, you have, I don't even know the minutes now. Like you feel like 70 something minutes, I think, on compact disc. So you didn't have. The only concern was like, how much time are people willing to spend with this album?
Yeah.
Not necessarily how much time, like, can I physically, like, literally put on this format, right? But then, with the Brushy Mountain record, that was the first one we put out on. I pressed to vinyl, and even at that, the CD version has an additional song, has one more song than the vinyl.
Man, so much I want to talk about now. Like going back to the idea of a song not sort of you not knowing whether it is of the quality that you want to put out in the world until you've played it for people.
Yeah.
Do you give the song a couple of chances though? Because what if you
certainly
catch a room that's just like dead that night or
Right.
something, or doesn't land with them?
Right. It isn't like solely how people react to the song that made them. It's sometimes just how I feel about it. I'm not gonna say which song it is because I don't want people to. I don't want to. Yeah.
Sure.
But
yeah.
there's a song I've loved on the new album. I loved it from the moment I wrote it, but then like it just we were playing it live some, and the rest of the band loved it and felt really good about it. Like in that live setting, the audience liked it, and the band enjoyed playing it, but it just never quite felt right to me. So it's going to be really rare for someone to hear it live.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes what happens.
Wow.
With the songs is like, I just they fall out of the set because it doesn't quite feel right to me for some reason. And if they fall out of the set, that makes it easier for them to kind of fall by the wayside because, like I said, I forget things after a while.
Well, then you've been doing it for so long and you have so many songs now. You have all these records and you have so many songs.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be difficult when you're putting together a set list, for example.
Yeah.
I assume it's going to be heavy on the new record, but still, there's, songs that people have fallen in love with from 10 years ago that they're coming to the show hoping to hear. How does that consideration, what do you do about that?
I prep for that. Sometimes, like I try to rotate. I try to bring the old songs back and kind of like with every band tours are a little different than the solo thing because it isn't. I don't necessarily always have the same group of guys. First of all, I've got a handful of guys who will tour with me. So to go out on the road and do say a month or 6 weeks of band tour. I pretty much try to decide which songs will be in the song pool for those sets. The sets are sometimes, we might have a 30-minute festival feature or a 45-minute opening slot or a headlining slot or whatever. So the song pool has to be big enough to cover whatever our longest potential set would be. So that said, it always does lean a little heavy on the new stuff because we're trying to get people turned on to the new records as they come out. But with every tour, I try to change it up enough so people aren't getting the same show. If we come through a town, twice in a year, I want those shows to be different. And I want some of the songs that, I've loved or the band's loved or the fans have loved to not completely disappear,
Yeah.
So But that means not only are those guys sometimes brushing up on old stuff, but so am I.
Yeah.
I played Snackbar Mary from the Brushy Mountain record last Monday at Little Indies, and I knew I wanted to play that because Matt Burke was on, and we were talking about story songs, and I'm like, it would be really good to play Snackbar Mary and Snackbar Mary and the Ten Pin Priest, but I had to refresh myself on it because it's been out of this. That song's been out of the set now for over a year at this point.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I think I can, but it would be embarrassing to think I could do it and then be on stage and forget the third verse or something.
Right.
Like, oh shit. Yeah.
I love the new record. It's my favorite of yours.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I like all your stuff, but it is my favorite. And you mentioned earlier the Switch. You made the other records with your buddy, Dave, and then the new one is with Joey. Can you talk? Who's just a fascinating individual to me.
Dude, Joey's awesome.
For folks listening, go just. I guess I could put it. I don't know how he spells his last name, but
Kneiser, Kneiser.
Yeah, and then it'll autocorrect if we got that wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're not familiar with his work and you're listening to this, go look that up because
Joe's
what
amazing.
a fascinating dude. What was that process look like working with him, especially since the other records, you establish a relationship at some point, right? With somebody. So what was it like working with him?
It was great. And you're right about the relationship I had with Dave. We had worked on so many records together, and we'd been in a band together before, and everything like that. But Joey and I had also been friends for some time, and I was excited. I was excited when he brought up the idea of maybe working on a record, because in my head I was like, I want to ask Joey Kneiser if he wants to make my record. But he stays super busy, and he had a film project on his plate, and
the most recent one
the Mr. Presto.
So wild, man.
What's interesting is I went over. He invited me to his house for dinner one night, and he was telling me about the film project.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, and in my head I'm like, okay, shit. I wanted to ask him about making a record, but it looks like he's going to be busy for a while.
Yeah.
But that night, organically, he's like, "Hey, man, we should make a record." I'm like, "Oh yes,
score!
You brought it up. That's awesome." So it worked out. It worked out
That's
great.
Awesome, man.
He made the film, and he and his wife had a baby. And then things settled down just enough when I had some music ready and I was ready to make a record. Things had settled down and he was in the position to do it. So I couldn't have been happier. But I've been a fan. I'm a fan of the music. I'm a fan of all those like glossary albums and the work he did with Austin Lucas. So it was cool. It was a fun, vibey, sessions.
That's awesome.
Something that was different this time around. Having been on the road with the band quite a bit, I'd had the band on the road more between the time we made How to Survive and the time we made Natural Disasters. I've been touring with the band leading up to How to Survive. I hardly ever took a band on the road.
Oh, interesting.
Before fall of 15, and it was December 15 we started making that record. So there was no kind of we hadn't really worked on any of these songs in any sort of like live setting going into the studio to make How to Survive. But it was a little bit different with the Natural Disasters record, because even though we hadn't been playing a lot of the new songs live, we had been playing kind of as a band, throughout that year, leading up to the recording. So we were able to get in a room and do all the pre-production and the rehearsals for for the album, and then set up and record live.
Awesome.
Obviously with overdubs and stuff like
Sure.
that. But the bulk of the songs were recorded in Joey's basement studio live.
That's just I wish I could have been there for that. Like that just
That's
seems
so
like
fun, man.
such a good time. It just
Yeah.
seems like such a blast.
Yeah.
I gotta meet that guy and hopefully get him on the show. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
those
man.
Glossary records. I mean, I just can't. I never get tired of them.
Oh man. Exactly. Never.
Ever.
They're great.
Yeah.
Here's what's funny. I met Joey. He was in Glossary, and Artie, who was living in Murfreesboro at the time. I can't remember the year. It's probably mid 2000s or something when we first met. But I'd known of Joey Knizer since I was in high school, because he went to high school one town over from me and lived in an apartment with one of my buddy. My buddy lived in an apartment with him and his sister when they were all just 17-year-old kids. And so I'd seen him play in his high school band a bunch of times, having never hung out or met each other. Yeah,
That's
it's kinda,
wild,
it's kind of
man.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You seem to have a lot of those.
couple
Like,
of East Tennessee boys.
yeah, there's some. I mean, there's just so much music, and I mean, East Tennessee it's just dripping with that
man.
kind of music, And
Yeah.
I'm just reading something today about Bristol and just how many. I mean, you go all the way back to Jimmy Rogers and all these amazing kind of foundational artists, the Carters and all this shit, and then now it seems like every band I listen to is from East Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's something about the hills, maybe.
seriously, I wonder what that would be a fun thing to examine. I have read a little bit about it, but that'd be a fun thing to kind of go down that road and figure out what it is about. I think also the lifestyle, there's a lot to sing about.
Yeah.
There's a lot to write about and a lot to sing about.
Yeah.
Speaking of writing, so now you mentioned kind of that as you get older, your process has changed a little bit. Like, are you a sit down and do the work every day kind of person? Does it happen when it happens?
It's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not every day, but then sometimes I get bummed out about myself for not being disciplined enough to get up and work every day. A lot of times it happens when it happens, or at least the spark or the inspiration for a song or something will happen, and hopefully when that does occur, hopefully I'm at a in the sort of circumstance where I can kind of nurture it and sit down and see where it leads.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have a phone full of notes and like voice notes and little melodies and whatever, and that's and I carry those into the moments when I actually get up and make a point to work. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to start spending some time like first thing in the morning, getting up and working on some of these songs whenever I'm home and able to do that, whenever I'm still for an amount of time and not just waking up and getting in a car and driving.
Is it the phone? You mentioned the phone. Are you then having to write it down, or like does the sort of the vehicle matter? Like, do you have a notebook that you write songs in?
Sometimes. So I was always the person to handwrite everything and kept notebooks and all of the notebooks, and very hestant to sort of move into this
relate.
digital world. I would say I'm becoming more reliant on the digital right now.
But does that bother you? Are you okay with that?
Not really.
Yeah, it doesn't bother you, or you're not okay with it?
No, I'm not really okay. Like,
is that some kind of hang up?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of an age thing.
Totally relate. I can 100% relate. Like, I always have my notebook on me. I'm always writing down ideas. I've got notebooks all over this fucking studio, as you see. I mean, there's questions that I wrote for you that, of course, as I always do, I just completely threw out the window and we started talking. And then this is actually, Chris got me this. She painted that on there.
Nice.
It's me as a Jaguar playing guitar.
That's perfect.
I know, right? But this was supposed to be for me to write songs in,
Right.
Because I dabble and I really like to. Well, I've written one.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this. Now, I've got ideas all over the place, including increasingly now on my phone.
Yeah. They're more. I still believe. If I write things down, even if I initially put them in the phone, if I can eventually like take it from the phone to pen and paper. Even if it's already completed, even if I've already sorted out, there's something nice to be said about having like a digital copy of something on your phone is stored somewhere, hopefully somewhere that's going to be secure enough that it doesn't get, lost in a fire or something.
Right.
But I find it sticks in my head better. Like ideas stick better when I can write them down.
There's science behind that too.
Yeah,
there's research behind that.
It's easier for me to commit songs to memory if I've written the lyrics down rather than putting them in. And I should do I used to do a better job, and I should maybe try to do a better job now. Even like I have hundreds upon hundreds of notes in my like notes app in my phone that are only one line or 2 or 3 lines or just an idea that get completely lost until I sit down and then scroll through all of them.
Right.
And I feel like if I jotted those down like on a bar napkin or something, they might stick a little better.
Well,
and I might get around to working on them sooner.
And you know what else might happen, Matt, is this guy was on my show, C.H. Hooks. Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
This book is amazing, and I highly recommend.
Alligator Zoo Park Magic.
Yep. And if Joey Knizer could be a character in this, I feel like I don't know if that makes sense, but just it's a wacky tale, and he's a great writer and a real good dude. But he talked to me about the fact that like I have all those notebooks up there. Those are all just for years and years of collecting those notebooks that I carry around in my pocket, right? And I was telling him how sometimes I don't revisit those things, and there might be great ideas in some of that stuff. Right. Sometimes I revisit it, but I don't have a great system. My system right now is I put stickers on the notebooks, and then those stickers are from particular times in my life, and so that's how I know where that notebook was, or like what I was doing, right? So if I need to return to it, but that's kind of not a great system for it's not really a great filing system. And what he was saying is, he's like, what you ought to do is you write it down, right? Because you like doing that and because it makes the connection, but then discipline yourself to set aside time. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's every other day, to then transpose that into a document or whatever.
That you can catalog and
right. That would make so much sense. I don't do that.
No, I
right.
don't. I don't
but maybe we should do that.
Probably.
We had such a fun conversation the other night at Chris's art show, and you were telling, I don't know how we got on this, but we started talking about like bands that we'd seen and like cool shows that we'd seen, and you were telling me about a couple of things that just blew my mind, and one of them was the touring Lollapalooza in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
What was
I'm trying to remember the year. It was either 96 or 97. Lollapalooza was still touring,
Yeah.
And they didn't come to Knoxville, but they came. There was a field. It was a giant field. Maybe they have other events out there. I don't really know. It was in Newport, Tennessee. It was called Forks of the River, I think, or something like that. Mm-hmm. In Newport, Tennessee, which is about midway between Knoxville and North Carolina.
Yeah.
And but it was such a massive lineup, it was Metallica on either Load or Reload, one of the, you know, first short hair records. It was Metallica, Soundgarden, Rancid, the Ramones, Rage Against the Machine, Screaming Trees, the Shaolin Monks.
Was that the one you said Jane's Addiction was at?
No, that was 05. They were 05, I think, maybe 04 or 05. That one was, I saw in Atlanta. And it was whatever people could look this up. It's whatever year Jane's Addiction came back onto Lollapalooza. And it may also be the last year it toured. But yeah, that lineup was amazing too. It was Jane's Addiction, Queens of the Stone Age,
Wow,
Audio Slave, The Donnas, J5.
that's right. Yeah, you were telling me how you've seen Rage, you've seen Audio Slave
And Soundgarden. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I never got to see Cornell solo.
Yeah.
But I love those solo records. That Euphoria Morning record.
Oh my God.
It's an amazing.
Stunning. It's stunning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him, I think I mentioned this the other night, but for folks listening, I saw Soundgarden like a month before he passed. They played in Jacksonville, the Welcome to Rockville Festival. Yeah, it was rough. You know, you could tell he wasn't right.
Really?
It was really a bummer I'm glad I got to see him, you know, but.
It was like the 25th anniversary of Super Unknown or something?
Yeah.
Was it that tour?
It was that tour, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
I think that's the tour they were on when yeah.
Well, yeah, I didn't mean to bring it to that, but what are the, like, you're clearly a fan of music.
Sure.
Also, when you're there at a show, and these are all, I guess what's interesting about this conversation is that all of those bands are not necessarily bands that would fit in the genre, so to speak, of what you do now, right?
Right.
But when you're going to a show like that, are you able to just completely decompress and enjoy that show, or are you thinking about it on a different level?
No, yeah. I probably don't completely.
Sorry.
I probably don't completely decompress. It can be different, like working.
'Cause it's your work.
Yeah, it is different seeing like bands I love, you know, from in different genres do their thing. There's a little less. There's a little less kind of like. Critical observance going on or whatever. I don't know, man. Have you like done service industry, like waited tables, bartender, something like that?
Not really, very little. I've kind of like bar backed and that kind of thing here and there, helped out, but I've never had a steady service industry job.
You can ask any of your service industry friends. I'm sure they'll agree. Like anyone who's worked in like food service, if you go out to dinner, you notice everything. Right. Good, bad, or otherwise, you notice all of that. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing with me. Like some of the magic is gone, you know. Yeah. Which is, I don't know. I try not to let it all go away because I am a fan of music and I do like love to just kick back and enjoy a show or enjoy a record without you know, picking apart exactly what's going on, you know, exactly what's going on in the recording. Like, oh, I don't know, this sounds a little compressed, this is a little squashy and whatever. Sometimes just try to shut my brain down and listen to the fucking song, and you know, I just listen to the song and have fun. Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm with bands I admire. Outside of the quote unquote Americana genre, it's a little easier. It's a little bit easier, but it never completely goes away. There's still kind of like aspects of like the show production, you know, kind of like noting. Because
I would think all within the Americana vein that it would be so. It would be difficult not to also want to learn, right? So when you're going to see some, especially the people that are great at it, right? You're gonna want to pick up tricks from them and that kind of thing. So I know, like, I mean, I guess the closest analog for me would be podcasts, and when I listen to Brian Koppelman, who's got my favorite podcast at the moment, I can enjoy it. I do enjoy it, but I'm also trying to rip him off as much as possible. Like I'm like trying to learn from his style and the way that he approaches the craft. So I am able to really enjoy it and get lost in it, but at the same time, I'm like, teach me.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly an element. There's certainly an element of that.
And following that train of thought, what are you consuming at the moment in terms of art? Like, what are you reading or watching or listening to? What's got you fired up?
I'm nearly finished with an audiobook by Eric Larson, The Splendid and the Vile.
Okay.
Which is a history. I do a lot of audiobooks these days. I like driving. It's great.
Yeah.
And spending hours behind the wheel, those are often hours I maybe would have used to sit and read.
Right.
That I no longer have. So I've been listening to that. That's about the World War II London air raids and Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
During that, some that. I am like sitting reading Harry Crews, a collection of nonfictions called Blood and Grits.
That's great. I don't do audiobooks, and I think I ought to, because you can do both. Like I don't have any of them in here right now, but I'm reading. If you look at my nightstand, I've got 10 books, right? Like, and there's a book in the bathroom that I'm, picking at, and there's like, that sounded really odd, but there's like books all over the house that I'm 100 pages into or whatever, right? And usually I'm good about focusing, but I do feel like increasingly, and maybe it's the internet, I don't know, maybe it's my phone, where I'm increasingly picking up more things and not focusing on the one book. Yeah.
That might be a thing. That's the way we direct our attention is certainly changing.
Right.
I try to make a point, and the whole sort of like smartphone, social media, constant, accessibility, the whole thing.
Yeah.
It affects everybody. It affects even those of us who are like conscious of it.
Yeah.
And we're aware of it's happening. It's still I fall into kind of to like looking at if I'm home, if I'm watching a movie on Netflix, like check the phone, look at the phone for a minute.
Yes. I did it last night.
I'm not one of the people who just does both. Like I try to, especially when it comes to consuming, media, or somebody's art, like watching a film or reading a book or whatever. I try to give whatever I'm into my attention at the time. And then I feel like shit if I allow myself to get distracted. I feel guilty, like I fucked up.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I can totally relate.
Yeah. Because most of my life I'm a big film fan. Mm-hmm. I had before everything switched to kind of the streaming format. I was one of the people with just a wall full of DVDs. I could have opened my own like countryside, country corner, video store, and I would watch several movies a week. Often it would be the way I would, wind down the day. Just turn off all of the lights, turn the volume loud, and just enjoy a movie. And then increasingly I noticed the distractions would pop up. I would start watching a movie at the end of the night, but also have my laptop open and be working on booking. And it got to a point I made myself stop working at whatever hour, because when you're working for yourself and you're working from home and you feel like you're never caught up and you can't ever get caught up. You can stare at a computer all night.
Yep.
that's also not healthy.
Not healthy.
So it got to a point. I'm like, okay, this is the hour at which I close my laptop,
Right.
and sit down and enjoy a movie, because that downtime's important too. It's important for your mental health.
Absolutely. And and what I used to do, I used to have specific things that specific practices that would allow me to decompress in that way. So I'm a runner, for example, and I would run as that decompression. But dude, I listen to a fucking podcast every time I run now, right? Like, or I'm streaming music,
Right.
And I don't ever, and I used to be religious about it, I don't ever practice yoga anymore.
Oh yeah.
Like, I gotta get back on it because I know I'm better when I do it.
Right.
But and I do think, like, I think this is like a confession here in the moment. Like, I really do think that I'm getting bad about my phone.
Yeah.
And like last night I was watching The Outsider on.
Don't tell me.
Okay.
I was watching it before I left home.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
going to be waiting.
It's good. It's good. So yeah, I was watching that, but I was also on Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing about that. As a result of me being on Twitter and watching the show, it looks like I'm going to get to interview a couple of my creative heroes because I put out on there, look, I got time off right now.
Yeah.
And put this out to my fans, like who wants, what do you want me to do? Like, I'll email or call anybody right now. I've got time. Why not? I can produce a podcast a day if I've got time,
Sure.
So I'm not really gonna do that, but maybe, fuck it. I've already got like 6 in the can. This is 7.
Yeah.
Plus a couple people said yes. So like huge names that have been dream guests said yes.
That's awesome.
Because of that tool, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, I guess I could have just been sitting there doing that work instead of having the show on.
Right.
And I do feel guilty about it because I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the show and now because I do feel bad. This is this beautiful piece of television that I wasn't really paying full attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know, man. Maybe it makes me just sound like a grumpy old dude or whatever, but I feel like not only are people missing, the television program they're watching, or they're not giving their full attention to whatever piece of media they're consuming, but also it's kind of in the way of interpersonal communications and just sort of like interaction amongst friends or whatever. I pay a lot of attention to it, especially like being out, I was going to say, especially like being out, by myself doing like these solo tours or even with the band or whatever. I'm often in a public setting. And not particularly interacting with anybody, right? So just watching people.
Interesting.
And it's so bizarre. It's just so bizarre for me, or I find it bizarre to be like in a restaurant or a bar and just take a quick scan of the room and note how many people are sitting with other fucking people staring at a screen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're sitting across from a living, breathing human being.
Yeah.
Have a conversation.
Yeah.
I watched an entire family have lunch in Lexington, Kentucky. I watched an entire family sitting at this table, and I mean the two grandparents, parents, and a couple of children, like a 6-top lunch table.
Yeah.
Everyone except for the grandfather was staring at a phone. 5 out of 6 people sitting at lunch together with family, staring at a phone instead of having a conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a grumpy old dude.
I don't think you sound like a
but I
grumpy old
think
dude.
that's.
No,
I don't.
But dude, here's the challenge of it.
At what point does the tool become a crutch?
Right. And how here's the biggest challenge of that is that because it's so inundated in our society now that people expect you to have your phone on you. So like a couple years ago, I don't buy nice phones. It's not a thing that I do, right? I have an Android that was like $120 $20 and I
Sure.
thought that was too much.
Right.
So I have this phone. It works fine. I don't need anything more than that, right? Now, would I like to have a nice iPhone? Sure, because I have a Mac and it's good for the podcast to get good photos and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, phone dies, right? So my phone dies, and for 2 weeks, it was in December, a couple years ago, I didn't have a phone because I was
Yeah.
like shopping for the right one, and like I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I was the happiest I've
Yeah.
ever been. But here's what happened.
Were the first 2 days weird though? The first
Very
like,
weird.
couple of days.
Yes, absolutely.
But then
full
you
of
get
anxiety.
You get past that, and it's like if you leave it at home, like I've forgotten my phone, and then just tap my pocket. It's like, oh, where's
my
it?
Dude,
And I'm
when
like, fuck it, doesn't matter where it is. You don't need
it doesn't matter.
Go in the bar.
This
you
has
know?
been years ago, but I spent in 2009. I spent a semester in graduate school in Holland, and I just didn't get a phone when I was over there.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck it, I'm just not gonna have a phone.
Sure.
And I would feel my leg vibrating even though I didn't have a phone.
Oh, weird.
Isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah.
But anyway, what happened this most recent time, 2 weeks without a phone, is that people would call or text Chris to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
So that's not fair, right? Like,
Yeah, that's weird.
because I would love to not have one. Quite honestly, I would like to have
I would love to not
a
have one.
landline. Why not? I'm either at work and you can get me by email.
Yeah.
I'm at home and you can get me by email.
Yeah.
I have 7,000 social media accounts, right? Like,
Sure.
it feels like
Yeah.
I'm really damn accessible,
Yeah.
right? But if I go without a phone, Chris's life suffers because people expect
Yeah.
you to be accessible.
Well, here's a funny because that's what happens. So I have the phone; it's always on, but most of my notifications are off.
Yeah, me too.
My voicemail is completely full. It's impossible to leave me a voicemail. If voicemail's the only way you have to get in touch with me, you're not trying hard enough because there are all the other ways.
Oh, so many ways.
Email, like it isn't hard to find a way to get in touch with me. And frankly, I just got tired of listening to, garbage email or garbage
Right.
voicemails,
Right.
from telemarketers or drunk friends or whatever.
That's funny. So you just intentionally keep it full?
Yeah, just let it get full. It's been full for years. It's
Oh,
been
I
several
like
years.
that.
But so I'm not. I try to make myself not beholden to the phone that's in my pocket. Right.
Yeah.
Because of that, some people have figured out I'm difficult to get in touch with at times. Right. My roommate's one of these people.
Okay.
On tour with the band, it was my bass player, like people who were mutual friends of ours, or sometimes business contacts or whatever, would just blow that guy's phone up.
Yep.
Because they knew he would check his phone more frequently than I would check my phone.
It sucks,
He's
man.
like, dude, your roommate keeps blowing my phone up because he knows you won't answer.
Sucks. That the time that I was without the phone, what I do now is if I'm with her, I leave it here, right? Like, if
Yeah.
I'm with Chris, I leave it here. Except for the other night when I had to have it because I was selling art, so I had my Square, with me. But other than that, if Chris and I are out to dinner or something, I leave my phone here. But if
good
I'm,
policy.
yeah, it's good. But I wish, I don't want her to go through that. So I do carry it with me,
Yeah.
so she doesn't have to be burdened by it. But when I didn't have it for 2 weeks, again, I'm accessible. Like I'm either here,
Right.
or if I'm not at work, I'm at one of two bars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people were actually calling the bar asking for me.
That's
That's how it used to be.
I was late to get a phone. I was late to get it. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
It was the way it was. My girlfriend owned a beer bar. That's, there were many of us who would just take calls. They're like, hey, Matt here? You're like, yeah, I'm here. I'll take a phone call, whatever.
Yeah.
Nothing falls apart. This
Right.
is the other thing I've
Right.
come to realize, like stressing about whatever, whether it's stressing about whether your phone's on or whether you're missing a text or whether you're missing a notification that somebody likes your thing. You get a little dopamine when you
Absolutely.
whenever those notifications come in. Somebody likes my photograph. Ha, I love
Yeah,
it,
hell yeah.
It really is.
It's real.
It's addictive. It's a real thing. But like I don't have any of the notifications. I took the Facebook app completely off of my
Me too.
phone. I'd be off of it if I didn't play music and it wasn't a necessity. But you come to realize, like, it's, I still have it on me right now. I'm not in that position you were in when you were in Holland, but
Yeah.
it's not that bad. Everything goes on.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't sit up until 4 a.m. sending booking emails, if I turn the computer off and I enjoy a movie and I go to bed and I get at it the next day, do it for a few hours, shut it down. Go outside. Like, read a book from.
You're not missing any bookings.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing changed.
Like, you're still,
it's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And
there are kids
your
working. There are kids working like corporate restaurant jobs, communicating like people are via cell phone. I'm like, nah, dude. I waited tables. If I wasn't in that building, you're not gonna get a hold of me. You're not getting a hold of me. Nothing's.
Oh, that.
There's no need
crazy,
for everyone
man.
to be like.
Yeah.
100% accessible.
Right. Yeah, that because I really like to compartmentalize, right? So like I have this and this is one thing, okay? And when I'm doing this, I'm doing this.
Right.
When I'm at my day job, I'm at my day job. And I don't think about this at all. I'm doing my day job and I want to be focused on it because I want to be the best that I can be in that moment. But there's an expectation that people now have that like even if I'm not at that day job, right? You're not paying my ass when I'm, when I'm off the clock and you're texting me about some shit that's happening at work. Fuck that.
I'm with you.
You want to buy me a phone that is my work phone to get a hold of me that way? Fine.
Yeah.
Fine. And I'll make a decision whether or not to continue that job. Right.
Right.
But that's not the relationship. This is my personal phone that I just want to be personal, right?
Right.
I'm gonna text if I'm meeting up with somebody for an interview, right? Like we've been texting today.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely, right? But if it's something that has to do with my day job, fuck that, right? Like leave me alone so I can have this interaction, so I can be connected to this person who I'm finding interesting and who I'm learning from. Like I need that moment. And if I didn't have a phone, and people wouldn't expect me to be on a tether all the time, I could still do all these things. Like I wouldn't be worse at my day job. Wouldn't be worse at this. I would, like I could do all of that. It's just that we have this expectation. Fuck. Matt, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a pleasure.
Man, happy to be here.
This is a blast.
Here in this very moment. Sharing this very space.
Right.
Awesome.
I don't even know where my phone is. It's actually right there on the desk. But this has been fun, man. It's been really cool getting to hang the last few days and getting to know you a little bit. So I appreciate it, and I'm sure our paths will continue to cross. Oh, the one thing I didn't get a chance to ask you is I am curious about your connection to Orlando. Like you're very connected to Orlando.
Yeah, I am very connected to Orlando. It's funny. I started coming to Florida when I in a band I had a band called Plan A for a while, and we would come to Florida and we would tour in Florida, and through that I made some friends. One of whom was Larry Fulford. He was here in Orlando. A lot of folks will remember Larry.
Yeah.
Larry was playing in a band called Holidaysburg.
Okay.
And then there was another friend down in Lake Worth, Florida. Pete Stein had a band called Truck Stop Coffee, and those guys would play.
That's a great band name.
Kind of like Central Florida, and we would hook up with those guys and play. And eventually when I after that band broke up and I was starting to do things under my own name and touring solo, I was still tour down to Florida or whatever, and I invited Larry to record some drums on the first album, on the Matt Woods Manifesto album. So he came up to Knoxville, recorded some drums, and the next time I was down this way, asked if I wanted him to sit in and play on the live show. We did this 2-man thing, and then we took the 2-man thing and toured with it some. So that was a little added bonus to come to Florida a little more frequently, because I was starting to make buddies here, and Larry was playing drums with me, and he lived here, and it was
that's cool.
So it's just been kind of it feels sort of like a second home, especially this month, being here for the entire month of March.
Yeah.
Just kind of come down and hang out and and see buddies. You know,
That's great.
I have as many or more friends in Orlando as I have in Nashville now.
Wow,
You
that's
know,
wild,
I moved
man.
to Nashville only 3.5 years ago.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I was wondering about that because you're down here a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you are. But it's just I didn't know what the connection was, and I do think
a
that
lot of it's just Fulford.
Yeah, that's
You know,
funny,
now he's in Boston
really.
doing
I don't know him personally. I just
Doing
have followed him
comedy
from
and
afar.
stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I think of him as a
Yeah.
comedian.
Yeah, for sure. He was even, he was starting to do that when we were still working together and doing some of those 2-man tours. He was starting to get out and do like comedy open mics. And he's very, very funny and a great writer.
Yeah.
So it's really like that seems like it's really taken off for him to the point I think he's going to be touring some comedy shows in Florida, maybe in April, either April or assuming
seeing how
all
things
of
go.
all of the bars don't shut down
Man.
because of COVID-19.
What a crazy time to be having this
weird,
conversation,
right?
Right?
Yeah. I've
'Cause-
just been explaining to people I've had these allergies for 40 years. Don't fear me.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, it's weird because there are no confirmed cases in Orange County, so it's like there's one.
There's one.
Oh no.
Yeah. I heard that 2 days ago.
Oh
when,
shit! I didn't know that.
When what's your mayor's name? Buddy.
Yeah, Buddy Dyer.
Buddy Dyer. Yeah, he and the county mayor and a bunch of other important looking people held a press conference the other day.
Oh fuck! I didn't know that.
But yeah,
Because we've just kind of been going about our business, here in Orlando. Life's
Mhm.
just kind of like going on, and I see everybody around the country really going through it,
Mhm.
and having to stay away from places. But
yeah,
man, if we have a
Miami
confirmed-
Beach or Miami, I read today, and this will be long past by the time this episode is
I know that's interesting too.
airs. But in the news earlier today, I read Miami beaches are shutting down. They're shutting down beaches.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's a weird world we're living in.
It
This
is.
this is definitely uncharted territory, and I have a handful of shows left this month in Florida, and I'm kind of and I'm hoping they all still go through and happen. But I also want people to be safe, and not
Right.
get sick, and
Right.
so it's just kind of like everything's changing on a day-to-day thing. A few days ago, I checked, just sort of like we were supposed to be in Spain, not my band, but I was supposed to go to Spain with Chris Stalkup and the Grange next month, mid-April, to tour manage and drive, do
Oh,
merch
cool.
and stuff.
And you produced his record, right?
I did not. We're just
Oh, I thought
buds.
you did.
No, that was Jeff Shepard.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay.
so here's the confusion.
All right.
Chris Stalkup will be here on the 23rd to play my Songs Matter
Right.
show, and Jeff Shepard will be here the
There we
following
go.
week.
Okay, my
And
bad.
it's Jeff's record that I produced a few
Okay.
years back, but yeah, I think that tour's over now. Like Spain's locked down.
Yeah, yeah.
So like,
That
yeah,
sucks.
there's
I fucking love
some
Spain.
legit concerns.
Yeah.
Because it just happened. It happens. It's changing every day. So because I've been trying to figure out whether or not that was going to happen, whether or not we were going to be able to do that tour, I've been following the news pretty closely.
Yeah.
And in the past 2 days, the cases in Florida have doubled.
Wow.
But it's like the 5th most affected state in the country.
Oh,
right now.
wow.
Yeah, it was 100 and something cases today. Like 2 days ago, there were 50.
Damn, that's crazy.
It's really, really bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's canceling tours, and
Yeah.
I
I hate
things
that,
are
man. I hate that for folks
shutting
who,
down.
like, my paycheck will still come in,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
for touring musicians,
Yeah, it's weird, right?
and I'm glad everybody's, I'm gonna do as much as I can to record remotely with people, just to
Right.
just try to help promote as little as whatever I can do. Maybe people sell some T-shirts or
Yeah.
something,
Do some, online concerts or something,
Right,
some
right.
staging concerts.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw some other friends doing that. And I expect there's probably going to be a fair amount of that as people are like losing tours.
Yeah.
Like put together an online, concert, a virtual concert,
Yeah,
virtual
yeah.
festivals or something like that.
That's a wild thought.
Yeah, it seems like I read something.
That'd be cool.
About that, or maybe it was just somebody discussing the possibility.
It's so hard, man, because like I've watched a few of those, and I do it because I want to support people that I love, but it just there's no way to recreate the live experience.
No, absolutely not.
And so it's such a bummer. When we were a good example, I think, of this is when we were in the studio on WPRK here locally earlier this week, or last week. I had my headphones on and you were playing in studio, and so when you played I took my headphones off, because even just that one little even though you're sitting right there, there's a difference between hearing you sing it live when I'm in the room with you versus if I'm listening to it through the headphones.
It is, right? It's weird.
It's so weird. Well, dude, this has been a blast.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Drive through town. Stop and think about it, it'll drive you down. Don't you dare to doubt it, son, we're nowhere bound. There's no road out of the drive-through town. They built a river town on the banks of the Ohio. Rolling slow. Water low, wife and a baby in a house upon Union Hill. We'd work the steel.
Matt Woods, y'all. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you all for listening. TheRealMattWoods.com for physical copies of Matt's work. Y'all, now more than ever is the time to buy physical copies from record stores and artists directly. It's so helpful to buy merch from those folks. Matt's latest record is outstanding. It's called Natural Disasters. It's my favorite of his, but you really can't miss. Plus, he's a super nice guy, and I'm sure you can tell that by this talk. Again, I'm so grateful, Matt, for your time and your energy. Appreciate you, brother, and look forward to actually catching up with you in real life again sometime soon and seeing you play those wonderful songs. Everybody give the Marinade a follow on social media. We're active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, especially Twitter and Instagram, and we love interacting with friends and fans of the show. Check out marinadepodcast.com for more Marinade-related content. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community. What's Patreon? Well, it's a place where you can support your favorite creatives. I post sneak peeks at episodes and bonus content like our Patreon exclusive show, Jason's Journey, where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. An example of what you'll get is that Matt Woods and I ended up talking for another hour after the scheduled recording, and that conversation will be released over on Patreon. It's like a whole nother episode with Matt, where we just sort of talked about podcasting at first, and then it kind of went off into random tangents, and it was just a fun conversation. So that's going to be available to our Patreon patrons, and they make a big difference. Thanks to our patrons, we were able to recently book a ticket, pandemic-dependent ticket, assuming that we're all good by September, and the Rhythm and Roots Festival in Bristol, Tennessee is still on. So many great people are playing that lineup, and I'm really fortunate that our Patreon community helps support the Marinade in those endeavors and takes care of the overhead for the show. Every little bit helps, y'all, and I'm just really, really thankful for it. If you can swing it, that'd be great. If you can't swing it, I totally get it. Just give us a rating on your podcast app. Follow us, like I said, on social media. Subscribe on your podcast app. Just tell a friend about the show if you really like what we're doing. Word of mouth is probably the best way to spread the word about the show. All right, y'all. It's time for what I'm getting down on, the segment of the show where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. Last night, we watched Richard Linklater's film, Bernie. Jack Black plays this charming mortician who is accused of murdering the wealthiest woman in town, in this small Texas town. It is based on a true story and features interviews from actual residents of the town that were involved in some way or witnessed this whole situation in some way. It's a really heavy film, but it's also hilarious. For whatever reason, we are gravitating toward dark comedies lately. I can't imagine why, but that film is great. I highly recommend it. I think it came out in 2011. The record I just started listening to the last couple of days is the latest Future Birds album called Teamwork. I don't remember when I first got into them. I remember what happened when I first got into them. There was this really cool website, and I wish I could think of the name of it. If I think of it, I'll put it out on Twitter or mention it the next time. But you could download live performances from the greater Athens, Georgia area. So there were this is mid 2000s, I guess, maybe early 2000s. I'm not even sure how long Future Bird's been doing it. Maybe a decade, maybe longer. But those downloads, you could have old truckers, drive-by truckers, whole sets. And then there was one where it was Shauna Tucker and Jason Isbell at some club there in Athens, and seemed like it was just a random Thursday or whatever. I have a download of that's really pretty wild to listen to now. That's way back in the day when he was still in the Truckers, and he plays a couple songs that I don't think show up anywhere else. There's one called Crystal Clear. I don't know if y'all have ever heard it, but I don't know if he even plays it or at all now. But that particular set is really cool. Anyway, I'm doing y'all a disservice by not remembering the name of that website, but that's how I got into Future Birds. And they are the kind of band that I feel like is always kind of in the background for me. And I always, every time I hear their name or I see they're on a bill, I always think, oh, I got to get back into them. They're so good. And then I don't. So I'm glad I did this time. This is a great record. It's a little more, I think a little bit more musically adventurous than their other stuff, which is not to say that their other stuff isn't incredibly valuable, because it is. I just think that they are such a quintessentially cool band, and they kind of embody what I think of when I think of the sort of ideal of Athens music. So check that out, the new Future Birds. I think it came out in January of this year. Also, this is less artistic than social, I guess. Not necessarily political, but more social. And I'm interested to have this conversation with folks to kind of learn a little bit more about how people are thinking. I've been really curious about universal basic income for a while, but especially lately. I know it's not the same thing, but the stimulus check hit today as I'm recording this. And, I just started thinking about it, and I was like, if you're in a position where you have a salary coming in and you get that check, that just adds a huge kind of peace of mind, right? So now you're just less worried about paying your bills. If you're someone who is dependent on gigs and dependent on tips or any number of kind of transactional reliances that you might have in the American economy, and you had $1,000 coming in every month, it would not fix your problems by any means, obviously. But how much easier life would, not easier, how much more manageable life would be for an artist, right? If they could rely on, all right, at least I know I'm going to be able to feed myself, kind of thing, And I know that a lot of folks are beyond that, but still, it's just such thin margins for people who choose the creative life, for so many, and for so many that I love. And the other thing I was thinking about, and this article I read in Wired, which I posted on Twitter, and I recommend you checking out, because it really succinctly lays out both sides of the debate, for and against universal basic income. But it really made me think about that little bit of peace of mind and how valuable it is to have peace of mind financially, even if it's not comfort per se, just easing the tension of each month's bills or each couple of weeks' bills. And how if you were a touring musician, or if you were a visual artist or a writer, and you were just barely getting by financially, and you knew that was coming in, I feel like that would free up, I think for a lot of folks, that would free up a lot of creative capital because you would not have that same stressor. And I know, like, speaking personally, I know I do my best work if I'm taking care of myself, if my anxiety is low, if I'm living a healthy lifestyle, and if I don't have to worry about stuff like that. We're not going to be able to eliminate financial worry for artists ever, I don't think, but something like that could go a long way. And it's something I think we need to explore a little bit further. Of course, Andrew Yang famously was running for president in large part based on that concept, and really gained a lot of traction. But now that we see what's going on with our economy during the COVID-19 crisis, this may be an opportunity to at least try. It's not gonna destroy us to try universal basic income. I don't think that's the case. But I like the fact that it allows for people to get a little bit of help, but also maintain their dignity without the stigma that is unnecessarily attached to some other government programs, but also with the agency to be able to do what they think is right for themselves and their families. Like I said, I didn't mean that to be a political rant. It's more of a social observation. And if you have any good articles or books about universal basic income that you recommend, please send them my way. I would love to have a more robust discussion about it rather than just me talking at you. I thank y'all so much for listening. I thank y'all so much for all your support. Thank you again to Matt. Everybody continue to please take care of yourselves. If you can do it, go out and create something. If not, that's cool too. Until next time, cheers, y'all.